Hello, this is WhatiFRacing here, and welcome back to the Robin series. This is part 3, which will cover the Long Ring Longland arc. Be sure to check out my other parts in the series in my playlist. Link to it will be in the description below. And a big shout out to AO Cartoons for the Robin expressions that you'll see throughout this part. He's a great artist as well as a good friend of mine, so definitely check out his Twitter. Link to that will be in the description below. Before we get into this part, we first must explain how I will be covering the Longland arc. The arc begins at chapter 303 to 321 the manga, and for the anime it's episodes 207 to 228. In between that there's some filler episodes and arcs, so I won't be covering those as it's not part of the main story. Throughout this part I'll mainly be focusing on the manga and only mentioning the anime if it includes any extra Robin material, which is similarly how I've done it up to this part, and analyze if something works or if it doesn't. You may see more manga panels in the series from now on, as getting through copyright with the anime clips for One Piece is extremely hard. You're lucky if 3 to 5 seconds can go uninterrupted without getting claimed. And also, the manga is Oda's true vision of the story after all, so there's that as well. So for example, like episodes 207 to 212, I'll be looking at both the anime and the manga like normal. Episodes 213 to 216 are filler, so I'll be skipping those. Episodes 217 to 219 return to canon and will be mentioned if anything is worth noting. Episodes 220 to 226 are filler, and episodes 227 and 228 return to canon. Episodes like 215, 216, 225, and 226 only adapt like 1 or 2 pages from the manga, so I'm not going to include them with the anime side of things, is what I'm referring to. But for the sake of time, I won't be focusing on the filler material for this arc, and mostly going with the manga. So I hope you can understand my decision with this. With all that said, let's just jump straight into this. The Long Ring Longland arc begins in episode 207 in manga chapter 303, page 4 with Bellamy back in Jaya. But that's not the stuff we're going to focus on here. Page 13 is where we'll begin our journey, with Luffy saying to drop the sails as they're going to head to the next island. We get a nice interaction with Robin and Usopp when he says that all the dials work except for the Milky Dial. And Robin says that she imagines it only works in the environment up there. I feel that she's reluctant to tell him about why it doesn't work is because she knows how much he likes those dials when she overheard him in Skypiea. So she's more than willing to reply to him, and she's likely personally happy that he cares more about that than the treasure. I found it really nice, even if it's a small thing. Nami says that this pirate's loot is meant to be divided up and they got plenty of dividing up to do. Everyone is happy about this and they say what they plan on using the money for, except for Robin, who is frowning a little and not saying anything. Her silence tells it all. Once more, it's shown how she's not interested in treasure, money, or in materialistic things, like the rest of the group are. We've seen in the Skypiea arc how she's perfectly fine with taking the pillar from them, but that was only because they offered it to her, and she stated how the rest of the group would be thrilled to have that. And we've seen her steal Mercia's log pose of Jaya, but that was more to help the group out. So it's clear she will only resort to stealing only if it's important for the crew that she's on to help benefit them on their journey. While the group is discussing on using the money to repair the ship, we see Robin take a sandwich from Sanji. It's cute and nice, and she's willing to take it and even drinking the tea that he made. I do believe that she likes this Sanji the absolute most when she's normal and not acting all lovey-dovey. It's a small detail, but it's great to see here. While all these interactions are nice and everything, the weird thing is that the last 3 or 4 pages of chapter 303 were never properly adapted in the anime. In episode 207, the anime goes from them seeing the sea monkeys in the waves, and adapting 2 panels from page 14, and then it goes to chapter 304 onwards, skipping pretty much pages 14 to 18. It's confusing, weird, and I don't understand why it's done this way. In terms of starting up the next arc, this is the most jankiest way of doing so with omitting manga pages. In fact, looking back at episode 195 again, right at the end of the Skypiea arc, they do adapt this panel, but it's very loosely based on it. And Zoro and Robin aren't present in this in the anime. Usopp asks Robin if she sees anything, and she says that there's this island that's been in front of them for a while now. They yell at her saying that she should have let them know sooner. Usopp says that she's not doing it right, and when she sees an island, she must be more enthusiastic about it. He tells her to try it, but she doesn't and says that the fog is pretty thick. This is the 3rd time now where she doesn't tell the crew about something. The first instance is her not telling anyone where she was headed back on Jaya. In Skypiea, she leaves without telling Zoro anything. And now she's not telling them about the island near them. It's just really odd how this keeps happening. It's like there's times where it's obvious she's loving the crew, but then we get these instances where she just doesn't think to tell them of certain things. I would chalk it up as inconsistent writing, but this is more along the lines with her being inconsistent herself. But it does once more show her struggle to fully trust the crew completely. It feels like to me she harkens back to her old habits of always thinking of herself. Like she just doesn't have the proper manners or something sometimes to them. It's just really odd. Similar to in the beginning of the Jaya arc, she takes traveling the sea very seriously and completely ignores Usopp's idea of being super charismatic of finding an island. But this also shows once more how Luffy and Usopp are just unaware of her personality and how she works, and it's just another element of their childish antics sometimes. As well as not knowing much about her to know that she's not that type of person to be super excited about something like that, and it's not something that she typically does. Luffy tells her to come on, and do you have any idea how much they've all been looking forward to this island? Make it count. She apologizes and says that she'll be more excited next time. He says alright and to keep trying. It's just a really funny interaction that the two have here, and Robin's deadpan sense of humor is always hilarious. I really love how genuine and sincere Luffy is with her reply and says okay and to keep trying. There's a real wholesomeness to it. Even if Luffy doesn't know much about her, he isn't likely aware of her dry sense of humor and just took her statement at face value. But I do appreciate and like how as soon as she says that she's sorry, he right away stops being upset with her. I just found the whole scene adorable. I like as well how she's a bit more receptive to Luffy's comments to her, as compared to Usopp when she just ignored him, which can tell she holds Luffy to a higher level of respect than Usopp. As their ship arrives to the island, Luffy, Chopper, and Usopp go to explore it. Back on the Mary, Robin notices a ship in the distance. This is an anime-only scene, but later on we see when the ship confronts them, she remarks that it's the same one that she saw earlier. In the manga, she never sees this ship, but this anime kinda shows this issue of hers with not telling the crew about certain things once more. And this is shortly after Luffy and Usopp tell her to let them know about things that she sees. I feel like possibly the anime staff were trying to convey to us that she's not as thoughtful as we may expect. At this time when the anime came out, the manga was in the middle of the Water 7 arc, so it could be possible they were trying to set up to her being a bit more sinister or evil, or trying to maybe make her a bit more malicious, I don't know. At that point in the story, she left the crew and they don't know why. We kind of think that she's evil or something, so it could be that. Maybe that's what they were trying to go for with that scene, I don't know. It could be possible that they were trying to set up what Aokiji said at the end of the Longland arc, of her using people and betraying them. And that's how she survived in the underworld, and now she's hidden herself amongst the crew. Which, at face value, can line up with what she's doing currently. It's just a guess, but even without that, this still lines up with what we've seen with her up to this point. Whatever interpretation, I just found it interesting. In an interesting bit of dialogue, back when we see Luffy confronting Foxy when he shot the horse Shelly, is that Porquet knows about Luffy and Zoro's bounties, but not Robin's, which I found very interesting. She says that there's 7 in total, which does include Robin as well. Later on, Foxy mentions which crew member he wants to take if he wins one of the rounds, and he mentions Robin as the archaeologist. I'm going to assume Porquet at the time did know who Robin was specifically, because there's no reason for her to not mention her bounty. I mean, at this time in the story, her bounty is actually higher than Zoro's. It seems that Foxy has some kind of idea about her because he refers to her as an archaeologist, so that tells us that he does know something about her. I don't think he knows much other than whatever is likely listed on her bounty poster, which we never really see the exact writing or details that's on there, or any with the crew members for that matter. It likely just has some vague details like her bounty, which, why didn't Foxy refer to it? I don't know. This could be an honest-to-God plot hole. I don't know. Occupation and her blowing up the ships as a child is my assumption of what's written on there. Speaking about her bounty poster, we should discuss on that here. It's something that I should have done back in part 1 with the Alabasta arc when we first heard about it, but I just simply overlooked it. There's just too much things to take into account with One Piece and its greatness. Better late than never, I suppose. It's established back in the Arlong Park arc that Luffy's bounty picture was taken right after his fight with Arlong, so someone has to physically be there to take that image. Knowing that, and now that we see Robin's wanted poster that she's a kid, so the implication is clear is that she's hidden herself so amazingly well that she's never had a more modern image taken of her. It's a subtle but great bit of detail put in the story that's not just spelled out to you. It's another instance where One Piece always does a great job in respecting the audience's intelligence, and this is just one among many instances of this. I think no matter how you slice this is just some inconsistent writing on Oda's part to have Foxy know anything about her. And even when he mentions the archaeologist thing to Porquet, she doesn't comment on it. So I just believe this is just a really rare oversight on Oda because Foxy shouldn't know much about her, or if anything at all for that matter. Because everything we know of her up to this point in the story is that no one has seen her since she was 8, and only the government people have any clue about her. So there's no logical reason for Foxy to even know about her in the slightest. Now, with Tanel mentioning that she's an archaeologist back in Skypiea, he used some deductive reasoning for it based on how she was able to find Chandra and the writings there. So in that case, it makes sense for him to come to that conclusion. But here, there's nothing in this story that shows us how Foxy would know anything about her. I'm trying to rationalize any possibility of him knowing anything about her, but nothing adds up. Foxy mentions how they know Luffy's crew as they investigated them, but how much he knows is very vague. Porquet mentions Luffy and Zoro's bounties, but to the rest of the crew is just kind of brushed aside as she calls them a minor game. But later, Foxy refers to the crew based on their occupation or skill, so they do know something about them. But how they acquired this knowledge isn't told to us. Our only assumption is just based on the bounty poster, but again that conflicts with what we know and all that other stuff. This is just so conflicting from what we are told previously about her. There's two final things I want to mention about this before I move on. The first thing is that the only possibility of him knowing her being an archaeologist is that he could have overheard her saying to Chopper about who Davy Jones is. But this is highly unlikely as the two are positioned a few hundred feet away from each other. There's no way he should have heard that as he was up on stage and there's a crowd of people going on with this festival. The other one is that when Foxy does get a chance to take a crew member, he takes Chopper. If he knew anything about Robin, like what is claimed, then he would have known how important she is for reading the poneglyphs that would guide someone to the One Piece, which every pirate crew is after. But it's not fair to Foxy because no one at this point in the story knows that detail about her. The only people that truly know anything about her are the government people. I do think the intent that they're trying to go with is how little they know of her, but Oda slipped up by Foxy acknowledging her being an archaeologist. I think this just all boils down to him making a mistake on his part. I was curious how the anime did this, and it turns out these same issues still apply, but in a different way. It has the announcer say her name, and then after that we see Foxy mention what he heard from the announcer, sort of, but he only mentions her occupation. This raises even more questions that he's able to basically connect the dots from her name to that of being an archaeologist. So this still doesn't make any sense how he knows that. They shift the panels around to try to have it make more sense, but it just ultimately doesn't work. I apologize for going on such a tangent over that one little line, but let's continue back on with this arc. The ship that blocks them in is the Foxy Pirates, and they want a duel. This duel that they want is the Davy Back Fight, and the battle begins the moment both captains agree on it. But this is not a fight, it's a pirates game. Robin says it began long ago on Pirate Island, a pirate paradise somewhere in the ocean. In order to get the best sailors, pirates stole pirates from each other. The Davy Back Fight is a contest for crew members. They challenge them to 3 events. The winner of each game gets to choose one member from the opponent's ship. Nami calls it stupid in that they will never accept a challenge like that. One of the Foxy pirate crewmates says that the crew doesn't get to decide, but once Luffy gives the okay, everyone must participate in the game. Nami tries to reason with Zoro and Sanji not to do this, but Robin tells her to give it up as men are like this. They hear a gunshot indicating the challenge being accepted as Robin smiles and says this could be fun. I feel that's important to let you know what a Davy Back Fight is and what is at stake for the crew. And knowing this and to see Robin so calm and relaxed with all of it is quite surprising. Not once does she show any worry or concern like what Nami is showing here. She's aware of the consequences of this and very clearly knows about the Davy Back Fight as well as Sanji. This is the first instance of Robin being a lot like the guys and how they view this and fully understands how guys are wanting battle and refusing to back down from a challenge. Even her herself likes this idea, absolutely getting into this. I coined this term of her liking battle as a meathead, but we'll see instances of her joining in with the guys for wanting battle in some ways like in Thriller Bark and in Wano. It's just another element of her character that we see. It's a nuanced idea of her stance on fighting and when she deems it necessary, given the context clues given in the story. With her saying this is how guys act to Nami, this can clue us in on the life that she had and that other pirate groups that she's been with over the years are battle hungry, want a challenge, as well as refusing to back down from one. Which isn't too much of a shock as it's a common thing to see in this series, but it's nice to get that little subtle confirmation on this based on that line of dialogue. She's not battle hungry on the same scale what Zoro is, but she's completely fine fighting if necessary when being pushed, or in this case, enjoying the idea of this game. I just really like that aspect of her. The two interpretations of why she's so calm and relaxed with this game and the possibility of her being taken away from the crew doesn't bother her is because deep down she thinks it'll be for the greater good to be away from them, so no government people can harm them if that happens. The other reason could be is that she's confident that the crew can handle them, and for good reason. They did just deal with an L in the previous arc, who's basically trying to destroy an entire island. So it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for her to not feel too threatened by the Foxy Pirates at this point in the story. We see a wholesome scene where Chopper asks Robin who Davy Jones is. As she's explaining it to him, we see her being very gleeful and happy to explain it. It's shown once more how she loves to talk about the history of something that she knows, and likes it when someone asks her a question about something like that. And she does take a very genuine liking to Chopper once more, with giving him the cotton candy, because she knew that saying who Davy Jones was would scare him. And she was right, because once she told him about who Davy Jones was to him, it freaked him out. But once he took a bite of the cotton candy, it calmed him down. Which is a small but great way of showing her kind and caring side without saying it out loud, and knowing exactly how Chopper would react to something like this. It's just really wholesome how she knows how Chopper is and being so nice to him like this. I just love it. As I was going through the Water 7 chapters, I came across an SBS, which is a Q&A that fans send Oda and he gives answers to them. One fan asks, why did Robin give Chopper the cotton candy that she took a bite out of? Oda replies to this by saying that Sanji got 2 of them for Nami and Robin. and when he gave it to her, she took a small bite out of it to please him. Oda figured that she shouldn't give Chopper the cotton candy right away, as it would be very rude of her to do that in front of Sanji. Although she didn't want it, she was being polite to him, and only later on did she give it to Chopper when he wasn't around. I would have missed this completely, as this is all just implied. But this again shows the subtle nuances to how he writes his characters and gives Robin even more depth by showing her polite side. I just really love this, and this is all from a silly exchange of cotton candy. Even with knowing this now, I still believe that the other reason why she gave the cotton candy to Chopper was to help him relax about the Davy Jones story, like what I was saying earlier. The timing of her giving that to him is just way too perfect, and it would be in line with her character, with being extra kind and thoughtful to Chopper in particular, as we've seen before. But it's always great to hear what the author has to say about this, and it brings new light to her actions and how polite she can be, without just hammering it in your face with it. The anime changes this as when Sanji has the cotton candy, he tries to give one to Nami, but she won't take it. Then off camera, he gives both of them to Robin, and then she gives the other one to Chopper. But then Nami has one later on, so where did that come from? Possibly from Robin, but this is all off camera. This lessens the idea of her being thoughtful to Sanji and being polite, as she had two of them, so her giving the other one to Chopper isn't as meaningful as it would be in the manga. And there's no bite mark there, so there's no implication of her being mindful to Sanji's offer to show that she was being nice to him. I'm certain the anime staff just had no idea what Oda had in mind with all this, but it doesn't have that same cool character interaction like in the manga. It's just missing that little bit of extra depth. The traditional rules are explained in that you get 7 players for 3 games. Each player can only participate in 1 game, and once they decide on their players, they can't change them. Luffy gets excited that if they win, they can get a shipwright. We see Robin looking on and smiling at this and how genuine Luffy is in his motivation. The 3 categories are race, ball game, and battle. When they all figure out who will compete in what, Robin goes to submit their list. Round 1 is the donut race, and it has Robin, Nami, and Usopp on a team. Round 2 is with Sanji, Zoro, and Chopper for the groggy ring, and in the final round it has Luffy in combat. She says with 7 players means that every one of them will participate, which was in reply to Usopp's comment on not doing the race, and essentially saying to him that he'll have to participate no matter what, which I found pretty funny. Robin again just has this really smug attitude about all of this with her smiling. She's just absolutely enjoying the thrill of competition. With the first event being the donut race, it's an obstacle boat race consisting of 1 lap around the island following the shoreline. They must make their boat using wood from 2 oars and 3 empty casks. The use of any other parts will result in immediate disqualification. The commentator refers to Robin as an archaeologist. Now he's reading off the participation list that Robin handed in, but whoever wrote down the details for who will do what in these games isn't very clear. Zoro was the one holding the papers, so it could have been him. If her name and occupation is on there and she just ignored it, that would just be incredibly stupid and irresponsible of her to do that if she's still trying to remain hidden. No matter who filled out the paper, she was the last one to see what was on there and hand it in. Maybe she was letting her guard down of trying to not worry about stuff like that anymore. Similar to the campfire scene, but here it's just not conveyed very well at all. In the anime, they actually removed the panel of her giving them the paper, and only including Nami and Usopp being upset of the possibility of being taken away. So the implication in the anime is that Zoro wrote out the paper and handed it in, as he was the last one to have it. But even so, why isn't she more concerned about how they know her name now? Because that can lead her and the crew that she's on into much more trouble. Again, no matter what, it's just done really poorly here, and I'm just not a fan of how this is done. Now, to play devil's advocate, the earliest instance of her name being mentioned is in Alabasta, when Luffy confronts Crocodile for the first time, and he says her name. How she reacts to it tells us that she really doesn't want him to use her real name, either because she wants to remain hidden, or is ashamed of that name and doesn't want to associate herself with it. And this panel here is trying to show us how she's less ashamed of her name and doesn't mind it if it's being used. If that's the interpretation, then it is a nice character moment for her, but I still think this is a bit reckless on her part to be okay with this. My only guess is that she's trying to be more carefree like what the rest of the crew are. As Usopp makes the makeshift boat, Nami asks if it will sink. Robin mentions that it definitely will. Again, this is more nice interactions and agreeing with her that it'll probably sink as the boat Usopp made isn't really that well put together. The delivery for Robin makes this really funny as she has this deadpan kind of look on her, which is rather ironic since of those 3 she's at most risk if she falls in the water, since one of the Devil Fruit's weaknesses is the sea and it will make her sink, thus nullifying her Devil Fruit abilities. The anime changes a lot on how this first event is done, where it has multiple people participate unlike the manga where it has 2. The difference here is Robin never comments on what Nami said, and only says how it's a miracle that Luffy and Zoro's boats are afloat. Which the comment itself is okay, but this removes some interactions, and this isn't nearly as meaningful as what the manga presents. Before the race begins, the announcer mentions that pistols, cannons, explosives, cut glasses, and other lethal weapons are all permitted. She mentions if it's okay to sink your opponent. Usopp replies saying at least there's that. implying that he thinks that they aren't allowed to sink them. As the race begins, the Foxy Pirates interfere by shooting cannons at them, distracting the group and giving the Foxy crew the early lead. Usopp thinks that this has got to be against the rules as that attack came from non-participants. Then a boulder is hurled at them from off-field. Robin realizes that if they are allowed to use outside support, so can they. You see Sanji kicking the people that fired their cannons at them. Part of their bow is destroyed from their opponents, and Usopp tries to hit him with his slingshot, but to no effect. As then Robin grabs him and flips him over, which is a really cool moment for her to see her actively help them out like this. To which the Foxy crew members mention her Devil Fruit power. So is it that she's well known amongst pirate groups, or is it not? We see this earlier too when they refer to her as a dark-haired lady, so I have no idea. My only guess is that Oda is trying to communicate to us that people have no idea that she has the Devil Fruit power, since they were so surprised by it, which can imply to me that on her wanted poster it likely has no mention of her power, but likely on it that she's an archaeologist that blew up ships. Again, how Foxy knows her occupation is still confusing unless on her bounty poster it lists that, but the name wasn't familiar to him, nor did he connect it to anything interesting to him personally. But what I do think is consistent is the fact that none of them truly know how important she really is. The group are behind the leaders due to that start, and they're trying desperately to gain some time back on them. Nami yells at Robin that this is no time for reading books, but tells her that she's rowing with her other arms paddling the boat. Nami says that she doesn't look like it, and Usopp says look what happens when you don't make an effort, referring to how Nami will beat up Robin like what she did to Usopp, or to how far back they are, or it can be both of those interpretations. She says that she'll try her hardest. It's just again really funny to see her so calm and relaxed through all this. Usopp and Nami are naturally freaking out about this, and she's a good foil here for the two. I just find it really weird at this point in time how she's not really exerting herself too much, with how casual she is with reading that book. Originally in my script I was theorizing that she wasn't trying on purpose as she felt that they are already lost, but this panel here tells me otherwise, as Nami's worried that when they lose that they'll take her first as she's cute. But take a closer look at this panel. Robin sprouted her hand on Nami's paddle to row the boat as this is happening. So while Nami is freaking out and really not rowing, Robin is still actively trying to do something. Which also both helps in characterizing Robin some more, while also having a pretty funny scene with Nami freaking out. But the point here is that she is trying. Anime does the same joke, but makes it even clearer that when Nami is worried of losing, and when it cuts back to her again, Robin's arm is seen paddling the boat since Nami wasn't doing it during her being so worried scene. So it enhances this joke and shows that Robin is still focused on the race. Despite all this, I do think that she's not putting in full effort like what Nami had said. But she did a lot more when one of the Foxy Pirate crew members went and actively tried to harm them by attacking their boat before. She probably wasn't too happy about that and wanted some vengeance on them. To put it simply, she doesn't want to see them harmed, which is a very subtle thing that we'll see later on more in this part that will get expanded upon in Water 7. Usopp uses an impact dial to get them out ahead to the opposing team. She's surprised that they took the lead, implying that she didn't expect that whatsoever. The anime adds a line of dialogue asking him what about the impact dial, but he says he doesn't have one on him, and Robin looks at him suspiciously. He questions why does he not believe her. He would not lie about something like that. One of their friends is on the line. She says she didn't say anything. And they completely remove Usopp helping them out with his impact dial, and Robin saying how she's surprised that they got that big of a lead. It's just a shame that that interaction is removed. Instead of that impact dial scene, we have Sanji and Luffy helping them out. The anime tries to do something different here, but it just doesn't work. This also brings up a contradiction of her being able to read people, because she was wrong in thinking that he had an impact dial on him, and being suspicious when he says he doesn't have one. This is a case where Toei messes up, and even when this episode aired, it was at manga chapter 344, and the chapter about her reading people was pretty early on in Water 7. Even if factoring in 3 months of production time it normally takes to finish each episode, this is still wrong. They should have known this aspect of her. I just don't know why they made her be wrong here. Just for a funny scene that was teased of the mention that Usopp was going to do this, which is in reference to the manga, and then needlessly change it? I could just make my own video on the Longland arc being a mess with the anime, but I don't want this to be a 4-hour video. I'll save that for the Enies lobby part. Their lead doesn't last long as the other team gets out in front of them again. Robin then sprouts her arms to grab the boat, which will in turn pull them closer towards them. As Nami praises her idea, they notice her arms and he tries to cut it, but she retracts her hands as she says, "Too bad they noticed," as she looks upset of this happening, which I found again really funny. Carpote refers to Robin as that girl, so again it really shows how they don't know anything about her. What is also neat is that she's helping out a lot more here. I was wondering about this, but I think we know why she was so calm before when she was rowing the boat, or at least one of the reasons. It's likely that the range of her powers couldn't go that far to reach the boat before, so she couldn't try and do that move here. It was established in Jaya that as long as she can see something, she can use her powers to sprout arms on it. So it is within reason now that with Usopp's help that brought them much closer to them for her to try this tactic out as she was more in range of the enemy's boat. So this means when she was rowing the boat and reading that book, that was all she could literally do in that moment. At least that's the way I took that scene. In the next couple of panels, we see Robin actually putting forth more effort in rowing the boat, like what Nami said for her to do, which is pretty awesome to see since at first we thought she was just being sarcastic, but she did take Nami's words seriously and is trying more instead of just sitting and reading. The next few panels again, we see that she has sprouted even more arms on Usopp's paddle as well to help them row faster. Before it was just Nami, but now it's gone to Usopp too. I really appreciate that detail in her respecting Nami like that. The second half of this race doesn't have Robin doing too much but reacting to things that happen around her. During this, we can see how little Robin knows of navigating the waters in comparison to Nami, with the certain dialogue that she says during this. And she's visibly sweating more than what Nami is. But what is really nice that is seen through this is her trusting Nami in her navigation skills and figuring out the long coral reef and how to get around it without cycling back to the beginning like what happened to poor King Capute. There's never a point where she argues with her or anything with Nami during this period of time. She fully trusts her skills and does her best to keep moving forward. With Nami using her navigation skills to get around the long coral reef, and Usopp using the impact dial again on the long ring whirlpool, they get the lead on their opponents, the cutie wagon. Foxy tries many different things to trick the crew to make them lose, like a face course marker to lead them in the wrong direction, pretending to be a dying old lady in need of help, and a fake finish line. Nami ignores these and moves forward. While Robin never comments on any of these things directly, it is very obvious that she knows that these are just tricks. It's just that Nami has a much more vocal way of showing how much these things annoy her. Porky fires flower shurikens at their boat, which Robin says that there's a hole in the ship, and Nami says it'll hold. The irony in Robin saying that and her being worried is quite funny. Before the race, she was saying how the boat will sink, and now it's actually going to happen, which makes her previous comments on it before just a joke, if it wasn't clear enough. But when this happens, she of all people is the most worried as she's the first to comment on there being a leak, which naturally makes sense for her as she's vulnerable to the water with her devil fruit powers. But this does show when the boat is actually sinking, she will be worried for real. Despite all their best efforts, they end up losing due to Foxy's slow beam, which slowed them down and made his team win. We get reaction shots of the group as Foxy picks Chopper as he's a rare creature, and that he's cute and squishy. In the reaction shots, it's very clear once more how seriously Robin is in taking all this, based on her expression and how her head is tilted down. It really shows that she's trying to be intimidating here. Then just like that, she has a comedic moment on what she may think Foxy's reason for picking Chopper is, because he may be obsessed with furry things. It's played straight in her delivery, but it's such a wonderful contrast to the rest of the group's reactions in this panel. In a emotional scene, Chopper asks them for help. He doesn't like this. He became a sailor because of them, because they asked him to. He can't be with those guys. Zoro tells him to stop blubbering. It's humiliating. The choice to become a sailor was his own. Where he ends up is his own fault and no one else's. They accepted this challenge. Usopp and the others gave it their best. Pirates have no pity for crybabies. If he's a man, then act like one, and see this through to the end. Chopper does listen to him and he stops crying. First off, Zoro mentions how Usopp and the others did their best, which obviously includes Robin as well here, which I appreciate that detail that he acknowledges that she did her best there. It's a small but good progression for Zoro after the Skypiea incident. During Chopper's speech, we see Robin look a little more sympathetic. I think the difference in the panel where Foxy is about to pick someone from the crew, and then her looking at Chopper is important to show the difference here in just that little subtle head tilt. To Robin, this is the first instance she's ever heard of Chopper's reasoning for joining Luffy since she wasn't on the crew during the Drum Island arc. So with her hearing this, she's saddened by how he's reacting to all this. She obviously cares about him through everything that we've seen in the story up to this point, and this subtle head tilt change of looking forward is enough to tell us how she feels deep down in this moment. Now, a part of me believes what Zoro said to Chopper here is something that both Luffy and Robin agree upon, since the way those two reacted to Chopper's speech is pretty similar. But the two of them just didn't have the heart to say that to him like what Zoro said, as it is pretty harsh sounding. And I do think out of those reaction shots, those two are the least worried, or at the least are understanding the risks of being a sailor, and how pirates have no pity for crybabies. This is the way that I took this, and this is how Robin is likely not nearly as visibly worried like the rest of them are. That's just my assumption. I could be making a stretch out of that, but that's just how I interpreted that situation. I haven't mentioned the anime in a bit, but there's a few things we can discuss here. In the anime, when they're in the whirlpool, Robin uses her arms to grab Luffy and Sanji's boat, who is above the whirlpool, to hold their boat so Usopp can use his impact dial. As she says, "Go ahead, long-nose-kun." The biggest issue I have with this is that there is no reason for her to add the suffix kun, as that word is only used when they are close friends. She never uses this suffix to anyone else, so it's a little jarring to see it here. And to Usopp of all people, where she hasn't had nearly enough interactions with him. This is all filler, but yet again, it's just an added thing that just wasn't needed. Now another meaning to the word coon is to be polite when they're referring to their name, but this is contradicted because she doesn't say his actual name, so this doesn't work either. This is just bizarre, and even so, this is just way too early for her to say this to him. What does work is, we do get a nice one where Chopper asks everyone if they're okay, and if they're hurt. Robin says to him no, that they're okay. It's nice that she replies to his question, letting him be at ease that they are all fine. The anime doesn't have the neat nuanced head tilts that Robin does, with Foxy picking Chopper with her looking down. It just doesn't look nearly as good. And in Chopper's speech, we only get Luffy's reaction shot, everyone else's is removed, which does take away her looking sympathetic to him, showing her more caring side of herself. It's a change that I'm not a fan of. Anyways, back to the manga side of things. Usopp says, wasn't Chopper supposed to play in the second round? She replies with saying that he's right. They get told that's what's great about this game. They can't change their lineup, and no substitutions. Through her interaction here, this tells us this is just another aspect of the Davy Back Fight that she is aware of, since she's not surprised by this fact. And this is also why she's likely not so nervous about this, since she knows that there's 2 more rounds in these games to have a chance to get Chopper back. Sanji refers to this too when Luffy tells him to get him back. This is consistent that both Robin and Sanji are the two that know of the Davy Back Fight, and the rules that go along with it. The Groggy monsters enter the field for the second game called the Groggy Ring. Nami comments on how she's never seen a giant fish before, but Robin says how he's not as big as a pure giant. At first glance, this may seem as an offhand comment, but this in hindsight is her referring to Sol, who she met when she was just a child. So she does indeed know the true height and scale of a real actual giant. So this isn't just a random comment. It actually makes sense for her to know this, and the fact that this is so well planned out ahead of time is just another insane testament to Oda's god-tier writing skills. When Sanji and Zoro are getting beat up by the Groggy monsters, Robin comments, "They're horrible," referring to how bad of a beatdown they got from their opponent. During this, we see her very clearly worried for their well-being and feeling bad about their situation. Even though she's the least expressive in comparison to Nami, Usopp, and Luffy, to have her say anything and out loud is a nice thing to see from her to show us how she is concerned for them. And this is just another really nice characterization moment for her. During the fight, Sanji kicks the opponent towards the referee, and while he's knocked down, Nami takes his cards and whistle, as Nami says it's an old habit of hers, while Robin says what a naughty girl she is. To give some context on this, before the game starts, they tell Zoro that weapons are allowed, but then later on their opponents are using them, so it's only fair that they are doing some underhand tactics as well. It's funny how Robin likes her stealing the whistle and cards, since we've seen her steal Mercia's log pose in Jaya, and it appears as something that she tends to do on occasion, so it makes sense why she'd like that from Nami. Maybe she thinks Nami learned it from her? But naturally, she just doesn't know that stealing is something Nami has done for many years. Either way, it's clear that she likes how sneaky Nami can be here. What I do find the most interesting is that Nami is the one who takes the referee's stuff. You'd think maybe Robin would have done it, since with her powers it would have been much easier for her to take them. It appears she was well aware of Nami doing this from the very start. There is a possibility that Robin was afraid to interfere like that and risk getting their team disqualified. This also shows that Robin could be a bit unwilling to put herself in risky situations if she can help it. And Nami, on the other hand, has always been sneaky and a thief her whole life, so she is used to being in those sorts of situations. Sanji and Zoro eventually win their event, and we see the group's reactions with Robin smiling. Again, she's not nearly as expressive as the rest of them are, but obviously she's happy they won, and she's right along with them all in that reaction. During the second game, we see Robin and her expressions throughout it, and how she started from being straight-faced to being worried about what's coming up and remarking on how horrible their beatdown was, to being happy they won. It's all small stuff, but we see her emote and show some concern for them. I really like how this is done, and all these small things matter when analyzing her arc and growth. Sanji asks Robin if he saw him, and if she loves him now. She replies with saying "you were cool," as she's smiling. Similar to the cotton candy scene, she's being polite with him and indulging him with his question. Well, not entirely, but she does call him cool, which I do believe she's being honest when she says that to him, which is a small step up from the cotton candy scene where she takes it but then later gives it to Chopper because she didn't actually want it, but was just being nice to him. Here, it seems like she's much more genuine and honest in how she felt with Sanji in that fight. Again, this is really nice and sweet in how kind she is to him, and how she's not annoyed by his lovey-dovey antics. Luffy's about to take Chopper back, but Nami stops him. She says round 3 is a one-on-one combat. The participants are Luffy and their boss. If you take their boss, they'll have to forfeit. There wouldn't be any more fighting, and he can get Chopper back. The Foxy Pirates call it peanut tactics from the Monkey's team, and they hate this idea. Nami sobs about how these guys are hateful, and Robin says that it may not be against the rules, but apparently it conflicts with pirate ethics again. What's super wholesome in this scene is that Nami goes to Robin for comfort. Even if this is just mainly for a comedic gag, no matter how badly Nami may have felt towards the Foxy crews or how seriously she took it, she still went to her for relief. And Robin even reciprocates this by hugging her. It's extremely sweet and does put into perspective how much she likes Robin. Her hug to Nami is still a little awkward feeling though. It's like she isn't used to this happening to her, nor has the proper words to say to her to make her feel better here. It does seem like love and compassion for others is still a bit hard for her to express that. With her wording on, but apparently it conflicts with her pirate ethics, I think shows that this is just something she's just not accustomed to doing, since she's always used to doing her own thing. To put it simply, she doesn't play by the rules and likely would be okay with Nami's idea. Robin says to her that if they go along with her proposal, they could just end this right now, but their boss would join the crew. First off, her naming scheme continues with calling Nami Navigator. It appears that she really would be okay with the possibility of Foxy joining the crew if it means that they can end the game early. But what is interesting is that when the crew says that they don't want him, she is completely fine with that too. So either way, she was fine with whatever decision that they were going to end up doing, and she never shows any anger, disgust, or just disagrees with them on this at all. Foxy states to Luffy that there's a difference between combat and playing games. We see Robin looking serious in this panel. It seems there's a trend where there's a comedic panel involving her, and then right away, she looks serious upon hearing what Foxy had to say here. Chopper says to Robin that he heard a person say that the combat has already started. She replies to him saying that it's just the warm-up matches. Not only is this another super wholesome moment that she has with Chopper, and even here in this panel, she's always happy to reply to him. This also indirectly foreshadows how she's able to hear conversations from far away when it's mentioned in the next arc. Foxy's crew make the sky dark, and Robin comments on why this is happening. This tells us this is something that isn't part of these Davy Back fights, and that she isn't aware of this, and it's likely only special to Foxy's crew. Luffy comes out for his final match against Foxy, and we see him wearing a giant afro, which makes Robin laugh and calls him cute. This is the second instance of Luffy looking rather silly, as Robin laughs at him. The first being in Alabasta when he became a giant water balloon, and now we have this. It's very clear she loves this when Luffy does something silly like this. She always seems to find his personality very charming and it always lifts her spirits. Another smaller thing to note is how she has a drink in her hands. The previous panel, we see Sanji call to Nami and her for a seat and we see him holding some drinks. So he likely gave one to her. But similar to the cotton candy scene, she didn't really want it, but she was being polite to him and took the drink. Throughout Luffy's fight, we never see her taking a sip out of it, so she didn't want that at all. Which, funnily enough, Oda later mentions in an SBS how Robin likes cake that isn't too sweet, tea, and sandwiches, which are normally not known for being super sweet, unlike cotton candy and soda for that matter. So it seems like Oda had this in mind with her for quite a long time with her not liking super sweet things. Back to the anime side of things, I haven't mentioned about it too much because there just wasn't anything major worth noting with her. But there is one nice scene I like to point out that is in episode 217. At this point in the story, the anime added a lot more added games, and in one of them they lost, and now Robin is a part of the Foxy crew for a brief time. Robin gets some popcorn and soda, and gives her food to Chopper. She keeps the drink, which is a bit odd considering what we know of her later on. This really doesn't make sense for her to buy it. But naturally, I just bet that Toei had no clue of that detail, as that wouldn't have been mentioned until years later down the road. But her getting food for him is a really nice thing no matter what. Chopper says that even if Luffy loses, everyone will join the crew. They won't have to say goodbye. She tells him that if that happens, Mr. Captain won't be the captain anymore. They'll all be Foxy's underlings. He asks her if Luffy will win, and if the 7 of them are going to keep sailing together. She says let's pray that we will, as she holds out her hand to Chopper and he takes it as they walk away holding hands. This is just a case where filler is done right, and it just beautifully expands on Robin's love for the crew in a very subtle way. And being a near mother figure to Chopper and being so loving and kind to him is just so wholesome. And reaching out to him to hold his hand like that because she knows that he's worried about not seeing them anymore if Luffy loses. I just absolutely adore this scene. It really feels to me that Robin as well doesn't want this to happen either, given with how she's hoping that Luffy wins too. And she does indirectly admit that she wants to travel the seas too with them all as well. Again, this is just a fantastic scene. Back with the manga, Luffy gets hit by Foxy and he's heading towards the water. Robin yells out that he'll fall into the sea. It's very clear in this panel she worries for him a lot, and we see what this bead of sweat on her. And, once again, it's just really great to see this. It's interesting how she's saying this to Luffy like as if she's trying to let him know what's below him. Though I'm sure Luffy knew, but it's just nice that she warns him about it regardless. She knows what will happen if they lose and understands the consequences. Which will mean Foxy will take a member of the crew, and they will permanently be taken away with no hopes of getting them back, as this is the last game. The anime adds a scene where the fight is going on. Nami yells to Robin, who is higher up in the stands than her, if she can see anything. She replies to her by saying that all she can see is smoke. I do like how Nami is so concerned for Luffy that she goes to Robin to see if they can get any more insight on the battle. She likely asks Robin because she's much taller than Chopper and has the best possible chance of seeing something. Again, these interactions help, and it's really nice to see this on display, and again, it's just really nice to see Nami ask her. Once more, very clearly showing how she values and trusts Robin for feedback. The last thing I want to mention from that scene is that, is it just me, or is this line of dialogue delivered weirdly? I don't know, it just sounds oddly high-pitched. I'm no Japanese speaker, but usually the voice acting performances in One Piece is great, so to hear this line being delivered like this, I just found to be very bizarre. But never mind the nitpicking. The anime adds a reaction shot during the time when there's a cloud of smoke obscuring their vision from the battle, and while Chopper is worrying about Luffy, we see her frowning, and even before this we see her being concerned with looking upset and that bead of sweat on her. When it's revealed that Luffy's okay, she is smiling. Again, a small detail, but it's just another nice little element of showing us that she worries for his well-being. The manga in this case is rather simple, where she just has one emotion. She never displays any worry in him. With this expression, may imply she's just confident in him being okay. I would prefer the manga more, and I just think the anime is trying way too hard to sell Foxy as this intimidating threat, when he's really not. I like both versions still, but I just feel the manga is just more in line with how Robin should be reacting to this. There's a panel where Nami yells at Luffy about how Foxy's luring him into a room, and it being a trick and having all sorts of traps. Again, Robin is stone-faced, similar to the panel before. She's just simply observing the match, which I found interesting. She likely didn't bother to say anything or yell out to him, because she just knows Luffy will just do his own thing and go after him regardless, and talking to him or trying to reason with him in this situation would be pointless. It's just my guess. As the battle is going on, we see a reaction shot of the group saying how Luffy won't lose to Foxy. Nami replies to Usopp's comment by saying why would you think an afro would increase his power, and Robin says he did look cool though. It's a little redundant how she says how she likes his afro since this was said before, but this does show once more how confident she is in him, and just how relaxed and happy she is. It's just too wholesome. The anime changes this where that line of dialogue from the manga is removed, and Chopper says how he's confident Luffy will get them back, and she replies with, of course, he has that afro after all. It's nice how she's indulging herself with that line of thinking. She's being a lot like how the Straw Hats and the Foxy Pirates are for loving the afro in her own way. I just love it when she acts like that. It's silly, but done in a way that keeps Robin's character consistent, and I do find this to be a bit more unique compared to the manga. Her saying this and Nami's reaction can be a bit of confusion on her part since the Foxy Pirates were just saying how the afro is the reason that this battle is taking longer, and she thinks Robin is thinking just like those pirates. Either way, it's really funny, and I enjoy this scene a lot. From this arc, it's rare that the anime does something better than the manga, but Lord and behold, it did. The smile doesn't last long, as when the cloud of smoke goes away, Luffy's laying down on the ground. And it's at this point where she likely sees Foxy as a genuine threat, since they're seeing him give Luffy a good beatdown. She's the first to notice him getting up and even pointing them to look, which shows her worrying for him and letting the others know as soon as possible that he's up. He continues to get beat up, but he won't go down. He says how he won't lose a single member of his crew, even if it kills him. It's a truly epic and a badass line from him, but the look on Robin's face as he says this means a lot to her since she's never in her life had a person care for her this much like this. Though obviously Luffy isn't referring to her directly, but to everyone in the crew in general. But those words echo to Robin a lot considering the life that she's had, and the way she's reacting to it is of shock and even sweating. I love this line as it shows Luffy's devotion to his crew and what it means to Robin in hindsight, along with setting things up to come later in the story, and just how insanely far Luffy will go in protecting his crew. As the battle continues on, Robin goes back to her focused expression as before. In this panel, Nami is still visibly sweating and Robin isn't, which I think is another small detail that Oda put in to make us pay more attention to the previous panel of her in shock by Luffy's comment. It puts it into perspective just how much those words meant to her, considering how much it seems to shake her up in this panel. That even when Luffy's getting beat up, she keeps her cool and looks rather calm. The contrast in those two is pretty telling of her mindset and what she wants deep down, which is her wanting to be loved and accepted by someone. Which could be why she's so calm at Luffy getting beat up, because she has faith in him that he'll win. Luffy and Foxy deliver a barrage of punches and Foxy uses a slow beam on him. They are all in shock and Usopp says what's going on and she says that they're not moving. Luffy falls down and it's revealed he had a mirror in his hand. It was stuck in his afro from the room below deck, so Foxy's beam was directed back at himself, so he's unable to move. Luffy lands a punch on him and walks away. Zoro and Sanji begin the countdown, while Nami and Usopp are confused by it, and even Robin herself joins in on this. As it hits zero, Foxy goes flying and Luffy wins his fight. I love how once again Robin's intelligence is shown here, with her being aware of what happened to Foxy and even smiling and joining in with Zoro and Sanji on counting down. It's very sweet of her to join in with them all, and it just once more shows how comfortable she is with the group. She's once more very clearly and visibly happy to see Luffy win, and it couldn't be more clear how much she adores him. When Luffy wakes up, he's told that he beat Foxy, and he's relieved to hear that as we see the group's reaction to his comment. Robin simply giggles to it, again showing how much she adores the group and loves Luffy's genuine care for them all. They come across a sleeping man while standing up. Robin falls to the ground and freaks out, to which the group are concerned for her and asking what's wrong. His name is Aokiji, and he's an admiral for the Navy, and he knows about her. His comment here implies that he knew her from a long time ago. We have never seen her before look so horrified over someone. Even Nami mentions this and points this out. She's even hyperventilating and having trouble breathing, it seems, by just the mere sight of him. It's hard to look at her being so terrified like that, but given what we know later on, we'll come to understand why she's so afraid of him. It's a very chilling introduction to Aokiji and his connections to her. Luffy says what's the matter to her and if she knows this guy. She doesn't reply to him. Aokiji says they go way back. Nami even comments on how she's never seen her so agitated like this. He says he's not here on orders. Zoro asks what organization does he belong to. Robin says the Navy. He's an admiral for the Navy headquarters. Sanji asks just how high up is that. She says that there are only 3 who hold the rank of the admiral. It's Akainu, Aokiji, and Kizaru. The only one above them is the Fleet Admiral Sengoku, the commander of the Navy. The world government calls these 3 the ultimate military force, and he is one of them. There are some key things to unpack from all this so far. Firstly is that when Luffy asks her if she knows him, she doesn't reply to him. I believe she didn't say anything because she obviously is just so terrified of him, but the other reason is because she doesn't want to say how she knows him, because it brings back horrific events that happened in her past. And with what we know of her come Enies lobby, she likely was afraid to say how she knows him, because if she told them right then and there, she feared that they would just cast her aside and see her as a burden to have around. Along with this level of fear that she has in this panel, she may also be thinking that the time with the Straw Hats would come to an end, and she'll be ripped away from the one glimmer of happiness and joy that she's had in the last 20 years. To have her not reply to Luffy, to which she still holds the most respect to, is very telling of just how scared she is. Now she does answer Zoro's question on what his organization is. I think she was most willing to let them know about this, because the government are the only group of people that she fears the most of. So she likely thinks if she tells them what group he belongs to, it may scare them to run away. We also get more lore on the admirals and their names along with the fleet commander's name, and the hierarchy of the government, which up to this point we haven't got much information in the story on the government in general. But it's also telling how much Robin knows of these people, and it makes sense given the life that she's had. We get some more character traits from Aokiji when he wants to take Nami on a date and bluntly says how curvy and hot she is, forgetting what he was about to say to Usopp and Sanji, and even Usopp isn't sure if this is the right person. There's just no way he could be an admiral. He says his motto is lazy justice, which is pretty clear considering his laid-back approach to everything up to this point. He lays down and says he doesn't intend to capture him, so don't worry. He just came here to verify Robin's whereabouts after she disappeared from Alabasta. As he expected, she's with those guys. He figures he should at least report to headquarters. He tries to count the bounty amount for Luffy, Zoro, and Robin, but he's too lazy to total it up. Luffy tries to attack him, but Sanji and Usopp hold him back. He thinks he's going to take Robin away right now. Aokiji insists that he wasn't going to do a thing, but Luffy still wants to beat him up. Robin here is just in shock and says nothing. In hindsight, given what we know of her, she's likely just amazed and speechless that Luffy isn't afraid of someone like Aokiji whatsoever, and even willing to fight him for her. She's never used to anyone defending or protecting her like this, and it's one of the people and organization that she fears the most, which is the government. This isn't just a mere panel, but a panel that shows her disbelief on what this group will do for her. It's all done with no dialogue from her, but it tells us everything we need to know about what she's feeling. It's a case where we look back on this and realize just how much attention to detail is put into the story. Luffy even tells him to walk somewhere else and go away. Now Aokiji sounds rather playfully annoyed about that since he has to move. It's funny how Aokiji's reaction is to this, but Luffy is taking this seriously and wants him to go away and making sure Robin is safe. It's once more a good way to show how much he cares for her, even if he's going overboard with it when Aokiji is being rather calm about all this. Aokiji says he'll leave, but before he does, he'll help out Tonjit as he was listening to them earlier when he was asleep, since he's a very late sleeper, and says to him to prepare to move out immediately. Luffy says to Usopp that he's going to help him out, and Usopp says it's impossible, doubting Aokiji being able to help. He goes on to explain that he wants Tonjit to catch up to the villagers when he was gone. He wants to go to the 3 islands from here, and he planned to wait for the tide to recede and cross on his horse, but he has an injured leg. Usopp says that if he knows that much, then he must realize he can't make the journey now. Aokiji says it'll be fine, and Usopp says that he's not convinced at all. Robin says that he can make it happen, once again showing us how she's aware of his talents and abilities. They get Tonjit supplies for his travel off panel, and we have Aokiji put his hand in the water. As he does this, a fish comes out to attack him and everyone tells him to watch out and get away. but he freezes the fish and the entire ocean. It's revealed he has devil fruit powers, and Robin comments that it's a Logia type. He ate the chili fruit. That is the power of an admiral from Navy headquarters. It's once again more telling how Robin knows this much of him and his abilities right from the get-go. She's not shocked like what the rest of the group are. So it's like she's seen him use his powers before. She had absolutely no doubt in him being able to freeze the ocean as well. This is all small details that would make sense why Robin knows of his powers, and just of him in general, come later in the story. Tonji thanks him for what he did, and he goes on his way. Aokiji says that Luffy is just like his grandpa. He's wild, and he has no self-control. He owed a debt to him a long time ago. He came here to get a glimpse of Robin and him, but he's changed his mind. Maybe those guys had better die now. Aokiji already is a character that is so calm and relaxed that even seemingly for that brief period of time when they get Tonji's supplies, and their dialogue exchange here really does seem like he has won over the majority of the crew. And Luffy really likes how he's helping this person out like this. Even when Tonji goes on his way, we get several reaction shots of Luffy, Usopp, and Nami seem to have warmed up to him during this period of time. This is until Aokiji changes his mind and wants to kill them. This already shows how we can't predict what he'll do next, and he's just way too unpredictable in his actions. But it is interesting that during all this, they seem to have completely forgot about what Robin had said, and the fear that she had towards him. Though they may likely think she's just afraid of him due to his status at the government, but they have just simply no idea the trauma and hell that she had gone through that the government has caused her. So I can't put the blame on the Strats for something that they just didn't know. But it is interesting to look at and point this all out. We must break down what Aokiji says next here because it's very important. He says how the government doesn't think much of them, but he does. He sees the potential threat that the group has, and it scares him. One reason is because Robin is a part of the group and it makes her dangerous. Once again, Luffy stands up for her and wants to fight him, which again shows how much he values her. We learn that it's just not her strength that makes the bounty so high, but the danger level that someone possesses to the government. This is why it was placed on her when she was so young. Now back in Alabasta, it was heavily implied that her bounty was so high because she blew up ships as a child. Now we're getting Aokiji saying that it's not always about the strength that makes the bounty so high. So we're getting new information and insight on why her number is so high to begin with. But at the same time, we're getting some conflicting explanations on why it's so high to begin with that random soldier and now Aokiji. Even without knowing what we do now, we can value Aokiji's words more in this case in particular because he's an admiral and that's a tier far above a common soldier, which means she does know something that the government doesn't want her to know or find out on. This is setting up for what she does know come later on in the story. This is where we learn that she's been a survivor since she was 8. What that actually means is unclear, but we'll get more context later. And for the last 20 years, she's been using people and betraying them and escaping unharmed, which adds more mystery to why she did those things, if it's actually true. And we get a little bit of an idea of how she survived in the underworld and now she's a part of the Straw Hats, seemingly about to do the same thing as she's done to other groups in the past. Saji doesn't like what Aokiji is implying with here, and this is the first instance of him worrying for Robin's well-being. We'll get more of this later on in Water 7 and in Wano, and just how far their friendship has come, but it's wonderful to see these early seeds being planted here. We get more mystery on the events that happened in her past long ago about what happened that made Aokiji let Robin get away. This is something that gets explained later on, but this is the second time it's brought up, so it's something that Oda certainly wants us to remember. He says that they'll find out soon enough. It won't be long before they realize what a troublesome woman she really is. In hindsight, this is him referring to the government going after her, and that she'll be a burden to have them along with them. He mentions how she's the proof of how every organization that she's been a part of up to this date has fallen, and she always survives, and he wonders why. This panel here gives out the impression that she had something to do with this in actively destroying the past groups that she's been a part of. Upon first viewing of this, it can make the viewer think that maybe Robin isn't as nice as what she appears to be, and it does make us question just how truthful has she been to them up to this point, and possibly using this crew for her own selfish gains and ridding them if necessary. So is what Aokiji's saying here true? Judging by Robin's expression, it does seem to be the case since she's visibly sweating and looking worried. We will later find out Robin's side of the story and what really happened, but it does make you think and reevaluate everything we know of Robin up to this point, if you're reading this for the very first time. There are some things that he says that are true in hindsight, like each group that she's with eventually falls, and how she escaped Aokiji when she was younger. We don't know the full details on it, but these things did occur and it is true. It's just how much of this is correct, and to get the full context of these scenarios. Each bit of dialogue Aokiji says here is very important in setting up future events and the implications to come. In regards to what Aokiji said about every group she's been with has eventually fallen, this is something we don't know too much of at this point in the story. The only group that we know that she was a part of was Crocodile and the Baroque Works. Robin in particular wasn't the reason why Crocodile and his group fell. That was mainly due to the Straw Hats. So that line with Aokiji at this point in the story just doesn't really add up, if you're reading this for the very first time. though in hindsight we know Aokiji is saying here to be a lie. He knows why these groups that she's been with fall. Her surviving isn't because what she did to them herself. I believe he is purposely twisting the truth to get the crew to betray her, to save them the struggle of dealing with the repercussions of having her around. Obviously this doesn't work. Again, this is all setting up for future events to come, and I do think this is brilliantly executed and it's just fantastic all around. Even after all that Aokiji has said, Luffy still won't believe it to be true, and he says that he doesn't care about her past. He says how close she's gotten to this crew. This makes Robin snap and she grabs Aokiji. Now why does she do that? It's because what Aokiji said was true. I say this because in the next page, he says that he may have said too much. She has gotten close with this crew, and among the other things they said to her that has made her fear come true that her time with the crew will come to an end. The one group of people she cherishes the most. This is something that she likely had in the back of her mind all this time. She just wants to get it over with. And she may possibly feel this way because of what he said may have the crew turn her back on her. She views herself as a burden to anyone that she comes across. No matter how kind they are, they'll toss her aside. She doesn't want to experience the mere thought of them betraying her, just like every other crew or people that she's come in contact with before, since she's dealt with this all her life, and would rather just be captured now and get it over with, but not without a fight at least. She literally shatters him, but he just comes back from it with no problem. He forms an ice saber and says how he didn't intend on taking her life. He attempts to hit her, but Zoro comes in clashing with them, thus blocking his strike on Robin. This is the second time we see Zoro show care for Robin, and this time she's awake to witness it. She very clearly had no idea he would defend her like this given how she was posed in this panel. As she was ready to try and defend herself, she likely had no idea Zoro would come to protect her like this, which shows how there's still that part of her that thinks that maybe the crew just wouldn't come to her defense like this, especially now given what Aokiji has said about her. But she again is wrong, and she just doesn't know how much they do value her despite everything that Aokiji has said. Sanji comes in and kicks the saber out of his hand and Luffy punches him. None of this works, however, as he freezes their limbs and leaves them on the ground in pain. He says to her that she's been up with some fine comrades, but she's still the same old person. Before she can reply back, he ends up freezing her to the group's shock and horror upon seeing this. He says to Luffy that she'll be alive when she thaws, but be careful because if she breaks, she'll die. He goes to punch her, but Luffy saves her. He attempts to stomp on her head, but Usopp grabs her and takes her away and runs. Luffy yells to them saying to return to the ship and do whatever they can to save her. Aokiji says to don't even try as this world is better off without her. Sanji and Zoro are ready to fight, but Luffy stops them and says that he'll fight him alone. Back at the ship, Chopper and Usopp are attempting to warm her up in the shower and trying to understand what is happening and what to do. She's in a near-death state and they have to warm her from the inside. During this, we see Usopp very clearly and visibly worry for Robin's well-being and life here. Which for him, and given how the two have very little interactions with each other in the past, this is definitely a big deal to see him so worried for her like this. The two are arguing on if Chopper's method will work, but all this back and forth from the two shows how much they want Robin to be okay and save her. Despite Luffy's best efforts, he loses to Aokiji as he freezes him. He says to him that you will undoubtedly find that woman to be more than you can handle. She was born with a brutal personality and you won't be able to change that. Taking her on board your ship is a great danger. He can shatter him right here and kill him effortlessly, but he owes him one. He took care of Crocodile and now they're even. Later, Sanji and Zoro come back for Luffy since they said earlier they were going to go back and help him, once they unfreeze their limbs. And they find him and take him back to the ship. Aokiji says according to their log, their next destination is Water 7 and he's surprised by this and he says that they'll be close to headquarters. Chopper comes out of the room and says that both their hearts are beating to the group's relief. The chapter and this arc ends with a shot of the crew sleeping and Robin wide awake, staring at the ceiling. There's a lot to go through, so we'll break it down here. First is Aokiji and his motives because we need to justify why he didn't kill the crew right then and there. Clearly he was capable of doing it at really any point since he met them, and if he really wanted to, he could have done it. The way he was about to punch Robin when she was frozen felt a little bit odd to me. Like if he truly wanted to kill her right then and there, he could have easily done it. But he purposely explained what would happen if he punched, and it seems like he was intentionally going slow to give Luffy time to save her. But later, the reason why he chose not to kill Luffy is because he did him a solid by beating Crocodile and making his job easier in capturing him. Now, is Aokiji contradicting himself when he says that he originally had no intention of taking her life, before he went to attack her? Did he really mean that, or did he believe that someone would come in and protect her? I'm going to assume the latter here. What makes this interesting is that after Aokiji freezes their limbs, he even mentions to Robin that she has found some very fine comrades, so I'm assuming he would know someone would come rescue her there. And we'll also learn later on in the upcoming arcs that it's very important that Robin must live, at least in the eyes of the government, to get information out of her. So Aokiji must be bluffing in what he was saying before. Now the counterpoint to this is, then why is it that when Usopp takes Robin does he look rather annoyed and surprised? I think it's just because he didn't really expect someone like him to do something that courageous, given his personality and character. Now before he freezes her, he says that she's the same old person. Robin didn't get to finish her sentence, but it did seem like she was about to say, "No, I'm not." So she's not the same person as she was before. This time, it's different, it seems. This whole sequence is chock full of intensity, action, and suspense for what happens next to her, and the fact that Robin's past is slowly being revealed to us, along with the idea that she's going to be this huge problem for them at some point in the story. The way this chapter and arc ends is a bit mysterious. She's just awake in her bed and has this blank expression, with the fact that her time with the group may come to an end because the government will pursue her and endanger the crew. And this time she's genuinely gained a love and appreciation for them, as we've seen throughout her time with the group. We know how much deep down she appreciates Luffy for saving her in Alabasta, and this is no different in this arc with how Chopper and Usopp saved her from being frozen. Now Aokiji did say that she was alive and that she will thaw out, but we don't know if we can take his words seriously or not, since his personality can change from being very calm and relaxed to being very sinister and threatening. But regardless, if Aokiji was telling the truth there or not, Robin still sees it as them saving her. Way back in Alabasta, she was saying how her being allowed to live was their punishment, which also can be interpreted as if she knew that the government would be pursuing her since she's a part of that group now. But obviously back then at that time, she didn't have that level of attachment like she does now. She always views herself as this burden and never thinking very highly of herself. But the fact that this crew, not just Luffy, all sincerely care and worry about her, is something that she's not used to and is truly happy deep down for it. I think by this point, after this event, she knows how they're wonderful people to be around with and do care for her a lot. It's just adding on to her relationship with the crew, and it's all been built up so brilliantly well, and this just makes what's to come in the next arc that much more tragic and sudden. Oda up to this point has spent over 100 chapters building her character up and the relationships with the crew. This arc sets the next one up to come, with where they are headed to, and a chance that the government will be involved in it somehow, because of how close the headquarters is to Water 7. Long Ring Longland is just the same amount of chapters as Jaya, which is 19. But it's very clear and obvious how much more involved she is in this one in terms of interacting with the group and being a bit more comfortable. When you compare her scenes in Jaya to Longland, there's a noticeable difference in how she reacts to the group, like how she could be a bit more at ease with them around, especially in the scene where she's reading a book in Cricket's house and watching the group from afar. And in this arc, she's pretty much around the group as much as she can, even being funny in her own way. It's truly a big difference in comparison in my opinion. I didn't mention the anime at all during this point with the Aokiji introduction, because I just think the anime personally nails all of this so well, I just really didn't have any real reason to comment on it. It's just that good. Though the arc does have a few issues like how Foxy knew about her being an archaeologist and everything, but the manga manages to be less painful in the long run compared to the anime. With adding games, Robin's departure, and Zoro saying how she never trusted her, it's just, it's just bad and makes this arc more tedious than what the manga had. Though I will admit, the last 3 chapters of this arc are fantastic and save a mediocre arc, which to me is the weakest arc in the series, but still has a lot of neat stuff to offer. I think that this is where we'll conclude this video. Next part we'll go over Water 7 in the manga. There's a lot to unpack on that arc alone, and I'm just glad I separated this into 2 videos because originally this arc and Water 7 were 1 video. But as I was working on this, I realized how much this arc had to offer with her, and I certainly didn't want another 2-hour video if I can help it. That'll do it for me. Thank you all so much for watching this video and taking the time to watch it. I do appreciate it, and it does mean a lot to me. As well, I do want to mention and thank all of my Patreon members that have supported me throughout my channel and everything. It's taken me a lot of time to kind of just put this together. So much delays, a lot of personal stuff kept coming up, and I just couldn't put 100% of my time into this like I did with the other parts, but it took a long time to put this all together, and I was really surprised with how much this arc had to offer with her, because originally in my script this was only like a 10-minute video, at least for this portion, so I was quite surprised how much more I had to say. I guess that kind of shows how much I've gotten better at this, I guess, I don't know, but yeah, either way, I'll see you all in the next part. The next one will definitely have me mentioning just how the format will be changed, because right from now on it's just going to be focusing on the manga itself, but I'll go into more detail in the next part and kind of go in step before I begin everything, but either way, that'll do it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next part of this epic Robin series. So, thank you for watching. I'll see you later, and as always, have a good day, everyone.